Love is more thicker than forget, more thinner than recall, more seldom than a wave is wet, more frequent than to fail. It is most mad and moonly, unless it shall unbe than all the sea which only is deeper than the sea. Love is less always than to win, less never than alive, less bigger than the least begin, less littler than forgive. It is most sane and sunly, and more it cannot die than all the sky which only is higher than the sky. E. E. Cummings. Jan will light the chalice here in the sanctuary, and I invite you to light your own chalice and place it where it can be seen by all of us if you are able. At times, our own light goes out and is rekindled by a spark from another person. Each of us has cause to think with deep gratitude of those who have lit the flame within us and the community. Before we sing the first hymn, let me remind you to leave yourselves muted. However, we do want you and whoever is with you to sing with Jan as big and loud as you like. Make it a joyous experience. So let's all sing the opening hymn, Wake Now, My Senses, number 298.
Wake now, my senses, and hear the earth call. Feel the deep power of being in all. Keep with your beauty creation your vow, giving, receiving as love shows us how. Wake now, my reason, reach out to the new. Join with each pilgrim who quests for the true. Honor the beauty and wisdom of time. Suffer thy limit and praise the sublime. Wake now, compassion, give heed to the cry. Voices of suffering fill the wide sky. Take as your neighbor both stranger and friend, praying and striving their hardship to end. Wake now, my conscience, with justice they guide. Join with all people whose rights are denied. Take not for granted a privileged place. God's love embraces the whole human race. Wake now, my vision of ministry clear. Brighten my pathway with radiance here. Mingle my calling with all who will share. Work toward a planet transformed by our care.
Thank you, Jan. Good morning. Welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Community of Cambria. We're glad you have joined us today. As a Unitarian Universalist community, we celebrate religious diversity and welcome all who journey in search of faith and spirituality. The UUCC is a lay-led congregation, inviting speakers from different religious traditions and spiritual or scientific backgrounds to speak at our pulpit. We encourage presenters covering a variety of topics and areas of interest to our community that connect us with the UU7 principles. Now, today's service centers around SPICES, the acronym for the 6 Quaker values known as testimonies. And they are simplicity, peace, integrity, community, equality, and stewardship. Today, you will learn more about the common nature between these and the 7 UU principles. My name is Mary Ann Anderson, and I am your worship associate this morning. I would like to extend a special welcome to today's guests and visitors. We're glad you joined us this morning under these challenging circumstances. If you are a guest and would like to introduce yourself, please raise your Zoom hand and unmute yourself when Andy calls your name.
Well, I think we're all members and friends here, and our presenter Harry has joined us, so we are good to go back to you, Mary Ann.
Thank you. If you are not on our mailing list, please visit our website at www.uuccambria.org so that we can keep you informed about all our activities. And please check out What's Happening, a weekly e-blast sent to all of our members and friends. This is a great way to keep up with the latest news in our community. And a reminder, if you wish to see this or any of our past Zoom services again, recordings of these services can be found on the UUCC website and on Facebook as well. The membership committee invites non-members to consider joining our community. Please contact Janet Cooper or a person on the board if you are interested. Thank you. So again, good morning and welcome to everyone. Let us now sing the affirmation.
Love is the spirit of this church, and service is its prayer. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in freedom, and to help, and to help, and to help one another.
We set aside this time for any short announcements that would be of interest to our UU community members and friends. Please keep your items short and to the point. For any items that need more explanation, please call or email the person after the service to be respectful of everyone's time. If you have an announcement, please raise your Zoom hand by clicking on the Raise Hand button in the reaction icon. When Andy calls your name, please unmute yourself and then speak. Are there any sanctuary announcements, Jan?
Yes. The worship committee, of which I'm a member, had our meeting last week, and we just came up with a fabulous idea for 4th of July, and we're going to call it Yankee Doodle Dandy or something like that. And if you'll remember the service we had for the holidays, our holiday potpourri, it's the same kind of thing. So we're asking everyone to contribute something reminiscent of a 4th of July past, a 4th of July to come, a song, a poem, a funny patriotic hat, a recipe. I'm sure there are some 4th of July recipes. So let's all celebrate together because you know what? We have a lot to celebrate. Thank you.
Thank you, Jan. Any other announcements from the sanctuary?
No.
Okay, then I do have one announcement regarding the men's group. The men's group will be meeting tomorrow on Monday at 10 a.m. and I will send out the usual invitation by email for the Zoom link. 10 a.m. tomorrow for the men's group. Hope to see you there. Any other announcements? Anita, yes, please unmute yourself and make your announcement.
Good morning again. My announcement is Greetings from the sister of Jim Shepherd. I called them last Monday and she said, say hello to all the members of the church. And Jim got a haircut, so no more long hair. And he is in bed since 3 weeks. So those are the news from that place. Thank you.
Thank you, Anita. We
You're
wish
welcome.
Jim the best.
Mhm.
Diane, I see you have your hand raised. Please unmute yourself and make your announcement.
We are having a women's group meeting tomorrow at 2 o'clock. And the invitations will go out on email for the Zoom meeting. If you would like to join us, please look me up in the newsletter. The information's there. Give me a call. And if you have any questions, I can answer those too. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Diane. That's the last of the raised hands. So let's send it back to the sanctuary. Marianne?
Thank you. Next week, Nancy Tolan will present Something Owed, an American Black History Summary. We take this time to celebrate all those who are having a birthday this month. Birthdays are a special moment. It is a time in which you feel as if the world is taking a moment to invite you into being, just like it was on your day of birth. If you have a birthday this month, please raise your Zoom hand. And when Susan calls your name, unmute yourself and please reveal your special date.
Okay, well, it'll be Andy calling your name, and I'm looking for any unraised hands for May. Any May babies in the house? Anita. When's your birthday?
The 24th, and it's my 70th birthday.
Wow, a big one. Congratulations on May 24th. We'll be thinking.
Thank you. And 3 days later, I think Art is not present today. 3 days later, it's Art's birthday.
Okay, Art Gillingham later in May. Terrific.
Yes.
Dolores, please unmute yourself.
Yeah, so I'm just calling out the birthday of Mary Del Bono, which was yesterday, May 1st.
Oh, okay, on May Day. All right, thank you. Any other birthdays coming up in May? I don't think so. Back to you, Marianne. Back to you, Marianne.
This birthday candle honors all the friends and many members of this community who are celebrating birthdays this month. Sharing together some of our personal and significant joys and concerns brings us closer as a faith community. We invite you to share the milestones that are deeply felt as a part of your personal life. But please be mindful and considerate of all who come to worship with us this morning. This is a time of community building. The collective flames of these candles embody all the joys and sorrows which may have gone unspoken today, but are also deeply felt in this community. From early Quaker Isaac Pennington, 1663, from Quaker Faith and Practice, Britain Yearly Meeting. What is love? What shall I say of it? Or how in words shall I express its nature? It is the sweetness of life. It is the sweet, tender, melting nature of God, the divine, flowing up through his, her seed of life into the creature, and of all things making the creature most like self in nature and operation. It perfects all good in the heart. A touch of love doth this in measure. Perfect love doth this in fullness. Let us join now in a time of meditation, of prayer, and of silence. Let us seek the quiet and calm, laying aside our struggles. And in the silence, may there be a reverence in our hearts, a thankfulness within our spirit, and a deepened understanding of the meaning of our lives. Let us enter the stillness.
No, not yet. You're muted though, so it's okay.
Please come back now. There is an old story about a great spiritual leader who knocked at the gates of heaven for admission into paradise. After some time, the voice therein inquired, "Who is there who knocks?" To this query came the confident response, "It is I. Sorry, very sorry. There is no room in heaven. Go away. You will have to come back some other time." The good master, surprised at the rebuff, went away puzzled. After several years spent in meditating and pondering over this, he returned and knocked again at the gate. He was met with the same question and got the same "It is I," gave the same "It is I" response. Once again, he was told that there was no room in heaven. It was completely filled. In the years that passed, the teacher went deeper within himself, meditating and pondering. After a long period of time, he knocked at the gates a third time. Again, the divine voice asked, "Who is there?" This time, his answer was, "Thou art." And the gates opened wide with the reply, "There was never room for both me and thee." There is not the divine and you or I. There is only God expressed, manifested as individual being. We have no selfhood apart from God, independent of the divine. Adapted from Joel Goldsmith, Practicing the Presence. Please join now in singing "Break Not the Circle," number 323.
Break not the circle of enabling love, where people grow forgiven and forgiving. Break not that circle, make it wide.
This sermon is titled Divine Names, How a Quaker Sees the Divine, to be delivered by Harry Eggleton. Harry and his wife Anne are very dear friends to Ames and me. We met them many years ago on one of our walks on Fiscalini Ranch and have been close ever since. And they're both friends and friends with a capital F. You'll find out why the F is capitalized from Harry's talk. Anne and Harry moved to Cambria about 12 years ago and live on Lodge Hill just above Marine Terrace. Harry is a semi-retired management consultant and fully retired HR consultant from Cal Poly. They have 2 great sons, 2 wonderful daughters-in-law, and are proud first-time grandparents with a brand new 1-month-old grandson, Silas. And they'll show you pictures if you ask. Harry was raised on Christian Science, and Anne was raised as a Catholic, but found comfort and connection together as Quakers over 30 years ago. May I present Harry Eggleton.
Good morning. It's a pleasure to be with you. I hope you can see my screen. Let me know if you can't, but it's really a pleasure to be with you. I am not in Cambria right now. My wife and I are visiting my father-in-law in Monterey. So it's really nice to be here with you. So I get to talk about divine names, how a Quaker sees the divine. And before I start, let me say some things about my presentation. And first of all, I'd like to say this. I don't speak for all Quakers. There's a huge range of perspectives for Quakers, from very liberal Quakers, of which I am one, to even evangelical Quakers. So I can't hope to speak for all Quakers, but I welcome the opportunity to provide to you my perspective. I also figure we're all on the same path, so I know that you'll be patient with me. But if I do say something that may be a little off kilter to you, please, I'll stick around for Q&A at the end, or express it at the time, however you want to handle that. But I appreciate your patience as we go forward. I'm going to give you a quiz, a 3-question quiz, because I'll bet you're familiar with Quakers a little bit already, and some of you wake up to this guy every morning. Question number 1, and by the way, there is no recording of grades here. I'm just going to do my 3-question quiz to show you how much you know or may know already about Quakers. Question number 1, true or false? The Quaker Oats Company was obviously started by Quakers. Okay, whether you said true or false, I have to let you know that it is indeed false. Quakers have nothing to do with the Quaker Oats Company. See, the former owners, whose name were Henry Seymour and William Heston, wanted a name for their company, their granary and their bakery. They wanted a name that inspired confidence and honesty and good dealings. And Quakers had a reputation for that. They established the company in the 1800s, late 1800s. Quakers were known for that, so they used the name. So Quakers have nothing to do with Quaker Oats, but Quakers have started these other companies, some of which you may recognize. And here are some Quakers as well that you may or may not know are Quakers or have been Quakers. So there's several around there, names that you may recognize, like, Edward R. Murrow and Bonnie Raitt, and even in the context of 6 Degrees of Kevin Bacon, Kevin Bacon's a Quaker. Okay, question number 2, true or false? But that guy on the Quaker Oats box, that's William Penn, right? True or false? Well, I don't really know. See, here is a picture of the guy on the Quaker Oats box on the left, and then you'll see William Penn also on the left below him. So in the beginning, there were statements by the Quaker Oats Company that, yes, this is William Penn, very emphatically. And in 1909, they put out this pamphlet that said, yeah, that's William Penn. However, if you go to the Quaker Oats Company right now, they will tell you that's not William Penn. Now, there may be some conflict with the family or something. Who knows what the reason is? It's up to you to determine whether that's William Penn or not. I kind of think it is, but we can't really know. Okay, third and final question, true or false? Quakers are called Quakers because of their uncanny ability to predict earthquakes. That is actually false. Quakers actually was a diminutive. It was an insult to, here's the formal name, the Religious Society of Friends. And that's why Mary Ann referred to me as a friend with capital F. That's how Quakers refer to themselves. The story about the term Quakers goes back to its founder. I think there's a little bit of myth to it where they said that George Fox, who was being persecuted, came before an English magistrate who became frustrated with Fox and said, "George Fox, you do nothing but quake in the presence of your God, not in the presence of the court." And George Fox said, yeah, well, yeah, that's pretty much true. And from then on, Quakers were referred to Quakers. We don't care what you call us. Quakers is fine. We usually refer to ourselves as friends within the community, but whatever you want to call us, it's just fine with us. Quakers are in somewhere in the long line of Christianity. It is a Christian-based, Protestant-based religion. With your indulgence, here is my slide that shows the whole 2,000 years of Christianity in one slide. But we get down to the bottom where we start to have Protestants, and then we get this bowl of spaghetti. That's what the drawing is. And Quakers are right there, 1640s. That's when Quakerism began by these people, the founders, George Fox and Margaret Fell, later became Fell Fox as well. I want to tell you about Quakers, but I want to emphasize 4 things, and this will get into the substance of what I want to talk to you about. First thing is, Quakers affirm a phrase that's important to us called that of God. We have a peculiar approach to worship. Quakers have no hierarchy. There is no governance, no apparent governance to what Quakers do to govern themselves. And we have these testimonies, these things called testimonies. So I want to take each one of those individually, starting with Quakers affirm that of God. This phrase, that of God, meaning there is that of God in every individual, may have similarity to UU's. I'm seeing that already. You may as well. But Quakers, for over 400 years, have emphasized that of God. We don't have a creed. We don't do that like the Nicene Creed or any other sanctioned statement or any kind of affirmation. We don't do that. We don't do altar calls. We don't demand admission of sins. We simply don't do that. There is a branch of Quakers that do that. They're evangelical Quakers, but I'm more toward the liberal side, and we simply don't do that. Now, there is a Quaker in Whittier. By the way, I belong to Whittier Friends meeting, and I also attend Central Coast Friends meeting. But there's a Whittier friend that writes it this way, the concept of that of God. She writes, her name is Lolita Barrett. She writes, "For me, grace and forgiveness are human concepts. They come from the idea that humans start out as sinful and somehow are undeserving of a relationship with God and God's love. But for me, God is just bigger than that. God is God. There's nothing we can do to deserve God's love and nothing we can do to lose God's love, because love is love. And to say that God's love is somehow conditional, and to think that God's forgiveness and mercy comes through some undeserved gift called grace just seems redundant. Well, yeah, the God I know cannot withhold compassion. God does not punish, is not retributive, and God does not seek vengeance. It's not God's nature as love. God, of course, may be disappointed or dismayed or may even mourn when we don't choose for our highest good, but God simply remains with us loving and lures us beyond to a better life, a life of knowing God is love. So Quakers for over 400 years have started with the basis of that of God, people as that of God, expressing that of God. We do not start with people as sinful, requiring some kind of, I don't know, action that brings us to get right with our spiritual father or mother. We don't start there. We start with that of God in every person. And that's central to Quakerism, and especially liberal Quakerism. Point number 2, Quakers have a peculiar approach to worship. There are what we call programmed and unprogrammed worships, and even semi-programmed worships, services, kind of like this. If you go to a semi-programmed worship or even a programmed worship, by the way, each meeting, which is what Quakers call their individual churches, each meeting is individual. If you attend a programmed meeting, it will have, similar to what I'm experiencing now, hymns and readings and those types of things. But if you, and by the way, here is and the Whittier meeting is a semi-programmed meeting. And so you can see the agenda. There is a key part there down toward the bottom called communion in the manner of friends. That would be similar to the time that we just spent in meditation. The word communion is significant to Quakers because communion to us means communing with God. It does not mean taking the bread and the wine as in other Protestant faiths. It means kind of almost literally with God for that still small voice of the divine, right? And if you go to an unprogrammed meeting, here's the agenda, get ready, here it is. That's the Central Coast Friends meeting agenda. You walk in, take a seat, and wait to listen to that still small voice. And if you have what Quakers call a leading that you'd like to share with others, you're welcome to do that. That can be your own experiences, what God, the divine, is telling you to share. It can even be a song if you'd like. But often as not, we sit in silence, in communal silence, awaiting the still small voice that comes to us from that silence, right? So Quaker meeting houses, that's what we call our edifices or gathering places, right, are very, very simple. And to me, very beautiful in their simplicity. These are 2 images. I particularly love the one on the bottom. It's a typical old Quaker meeting house. We sit facing each other wherever we want to sit because the leading can come to the individual. Now, here's a typical 3 meetings in progress. It's people awaiting the leading. And what happens is maybe you'll have a leading and stand, as you see in the lower left, and share that with the rest of the community. This is communion in the manner of friends. So Quakers have no hierarchy and a unique approach to governance. Just so you know, nobody's in charge of a Quaker meeting. We put it back on God. And so our meetings for governance are called meeting for worship for the purpose of doing business. So usually we meet for an hour and then we have food, we have lunch. But that's how we get the business of the meeting done. We start in silence and we close in silence, and we govern as a congregation on behalf of what the divine wants us to do. So when we can't agree, we either call a moratorium and put off the decision, but we never vote, because voting means the majority rules, and we don't come to what looks like consensus to a visitor, because a consensus means we all agree. The part where we may be in consensus is we all agree that this is what God wants us to do. So to say no person is in charge of a Quaker meeting is absolutely true. The meeting's business to the divine through God's leading. And then we have these things called testimonies that was mentioned in the introduction, and I'm going to share those with you now. Testimonies may be similar to the principles. I'll let you decide that. I think there's some overlap. Quaker testimonies are expressions of commitment to put beliefs into practice. We're kind of dedicated in our own way. We don't write these out or anything. They're meant to be how you let your life speak. That's a Quaker phrase, let your life speak. So whereas principles you can adhere to, and that's a sense of your personal dedication, for Quakers, we take a slightly different view, but maybe there's overlap, where we say, these are ways that you can let your life speak. And so they do spell out spices, as was mentioned. But here's what I did. I think there's a 92% overlap between UU's principles and Quaker testimonies. And the reason that I'm saying that is because before I prepared for this interaction with you, I went online, and you can go online and take these little quizzes that ask you your religious and spiritual leadings, your preferences and predilections, and then they tell you what faith practice you should be part of. So I took it, and it found out, right, the results were, Harry, you should be 100% Quaker. But the next in line was, Harry, you should be 92% UU. So I think that's where it comes, is there's an overlap between the principles and the testimonies. But let me describe the testimonies and see if you see a similarity. Simplicity is key to Quakers, absolutely key to us. If you go back to the guy on the Quaker Oats box, his dress then was called Quaker Gray. It was the most simple costume of the day, meant to be more functional than fashionable. And you'll see that with Quakers, we tend not to go for ostentation of any time. We tend to just lead simple lives. And when we have a meeting, that is what we call our church service. When we have a meeting, it's come as you are. Literally just come as you are. Simple living, it's expressed in a lot of ways. Among Quakers, every once in a while, for emphasis, we'll use plain speech, which means we'll use the terms thee and thy and thou. And I can let you know later maybe why that is. There was a great movie, or is a great movie, old movie called and it's, gosh, I think Dorothy McGuire. It's a great old movie about Quakers in the Civil War. But the song that is sung, the main theme song, is called Thee I Love. So we use plain speech every once in a while now just for emphasis. Another thing is, we don't use titles. We don't use titles among ourselves like Dr. So-and-so, or even Mr. or Ms. or Dean or Governor. We just don't do that. The assumption is, if you use a title, it's an attempt to maybe put one person above the other, and we really are serious about that of God element to how we interact with each other. So we're all first name. We just go by our first names. So simplicity is really critical, and it means querying ourselves in the way that, do we have enough? And that's enough, right? Okay, Quakers are pacifists. By tradition, we are pacifists. We have been since the 1600s. And that's a personal decision that we respect for each Quaker to make. There are two quotes that I love. One is by Wendell Berry, who's an author and an activist. And he said, look, if we are serious about peace, then we must work for it, peace, as ardently, seriously, continuously, carefully, and bravely as we have ever prepared for war. And Gandhi, most of you will know this quote, there are many causes that I would die for, but there is not a single cause I would kill for. Right? Integrity is the next thing, and we follow an admonition to let your life speak, so you should act honestly. Now, some kind of quirky things about that is Quakers typically choose not to swear to tell the truth in a court of law. We will not do that. because the assumption is if we swear in a court of law, what are we doing the rest of the time, right? So integrity means holding forth and not swearing. And I'll be honest with you, I don't swear, but every once in a while I do cuss, but don't tell my wife. Anyway, community, huge to Quakers, but kind of informal. Quakers believe that we are gifted by the divine, and we have kind of a sense of obligation to figure out how we can contribute to the community. And you'll see that historically, Friends have been involved in things like prison reform and abolition. Levi Coffin was named the president of the Underground Railroad, and he was a Quaker. We've been active in those types of things, but it's a personal decision as to how you want to use your gift community. Interestingly, Quakers have been involved in education for a long time. There are a lot of Quaker colleges around. Colleges like, there's Guilford and Bryn Mawr and Swarthmore, and just a number of small Quaker colleges around. One of the interesting, not college, but schools around is a school outside of Washington, D.C. called Sidwell. Sidwell is where a lot of politicians, ever since Teddy Roosevelt's time, have sent their kids, and Obama's kids have gone to Sidwell as well. Politicians' kids from both sides. Yeah, so we're into education. Equality, huge to Quakers. Quakers, men and women have been Quaker pastors since the beginning, and there are famous Quaker women like Margaret Fox and Mary Dyer and Lucretia Mott and Elizabeth Fry, and the list goes on and on. So equality has been a part of it for over 400 years. And then finally, sort of new is stewardship of the earth's resources. We recognize that we are here in a divinely inspired gift to us, and that is the earth that we share, and we need to care for it. So those are the Quaker testimonies, and I took a try at mapping, and you're welcome to do this. You'll see the UU principles on the right and the Quaker testimonies on the left. You may see some similarities. I invite you to do that, but I see the similarities. Now, the last thing that I want to do is I want to go back kind of to where I started with the title of my my presentation, which is dealing with divine names. And I have to go back to the principle of that of God. And you can see that it is sort of inspired by the quote from the New Testament in John, that there was a true light which lighteth every man and woman that cometh into the world. And we call the divine the light a lot, the light of God. And it's particularly meaningful to me. For understanding, there was a suggestion by Jesus that you go to the divine like a child. And so there's an interesting kind of we call Sunday school, first day school. There's an interesting exercise that you'll see people do, and they'll say, write a letter to God to kids. And it's interesting to see what they come up with. Here are some examples, right? Dear God, please change the taste of asparagus. It's grass. And dear God, in school we read that Thomas Edison made light, so I bet he stole your. How do you feel about that? And dear God, did you mean to make the giraffe look like that, or was you having a bad day? And dear God, instead of letting people die and having to make new ones, why can't you keep the ones you got now? Just asking. And this one I think is most interesting because Isaac wrote, dear God, why do we keep calling you God if your real name is Harold? And his Sunday school teacher went back to him and said, Isaac, what are you talking about? And Isaac replied, well, you taught us, our Father who art in heaven, Harold be thy name. Okay, we have a lot of names for God, and here is just a list of references to God in the Old and the New Testament. And in the Old Testament, if you go back to Hebrew, here are names for God: Adonai, Elohim, El Shaddai, Jehovah, which is a kind of a morphism from German, the YHWH thing, And you'll see that in Jewish prayers too. I don't speak Hebrew, but I've been to many Hebrew services, and there's prayers that begin with these words. Forgive me if you speak Hebrew. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu, and it goes on, which literally means, or sort of, blessed are you, Lord God of the universe, kind of a thing, right? When Jesus was asked by his disciples, how do we pray? Jesus changed the whole tone of everything by saying, here's how you pray. And I'm going to do it first in Aramaic and then talk about it. He said, Abun Dibishmaya, Niskadish Tuk. Now that first word turned it around, Abun. Abun meaning father, mother. The source of your birth, right? The father, the divine parent. So in that one response, to my mind, and very important to me, it was turned around because we go from a ruler out there, a ruler of the universe, to a God that is within us. That of God, the light within, the inward light, the inner light, spirit of the divine, seed of God, source of truth and power and unity. So maybe that little kid who said God's name is Harold, maybe Isaac was right. Maybe it is Harold. Or maybe because that of God is in each of us, maybe God's name is Randy or Marianne or John. Maybe God's name is George or Brianna or Dante. Or maybe God's name is your name. And every time you meet another person, you're meeting God. Thank you, friends.
Thank you very much, Harry. It was very enlightening, and I know a lot of us look forward to talking to you after the service. Normally at this time, we receive offerings from our congregants. However, due to the virtual format of this service, we invite you to make your offering in one of the methods shown on the slideshow. These methods are posted in the newsletter also, and on the UUCC website. Please keep in mind that our congregation is entirely self-governed by the democratic process. One of the privileges of our free church tradition is to provide all of the financial support for our many ministries from among ourselves. Generosity, therefore, is one of the spiritual values we recognize as central to our personal and our institutional well-being. You are invited to participate in the blessing of giving by sending us an offering. Thank you. Our thanks for the gifts, all gifts given and received for the work of this community. Let us now sing the doxology.
From all that dwell below the skies, let faith and hope with love arise. Let beauty, truth, and good be sung through every land by every tongue.
Please join us in singing the closing hymn, We Are All a Part by Jill Knight.
We are all a part of this beautiful web of existence, with a goal of peace, justice, and liberty. We affirm the worth and dignity of every person with compassion and equality. We encourage and accept one another in our spiritual growth here on earth, with freedom in our search for truth and meaning. We are all a part. We are all a part of this beautiful web of existence. We are all a part of this beautiful web of existence, with a goal of peace, justice, and liberty. We affirm the worth and dignity of every person with compassion and equality. We encourage and accept one another in our spiritual growth here on earth, with freedom in our search for truth and meaning. We are all a part. We are all a part of this beautiful web of existence.
Let us now recite the valediction. The flame of this chalice will no longer burn today, but the light of the flame within our hearts continues to shine brightly, illuminating the love felt in our community. Please extinguish your chalice at home now. After the benediction, please click on Gallery View button in the upper right corner of your screen, but please remain muted. Andy will call on you when you raise your hand, your Zoom hand, if you have any questions or comments. Harry?
Thank you, Marianne. You know, it was mentioned in the beginning that I did not start a Quaker. My background is in Christian Science. My mother was a Christian Scientist, her mother and her mother, so since the 1800s. And we've been inspired now for 7 generations with this Quaker prayer by Mary Baker Eddy. And it is divine love, always has met and always will meet every human need, for God is love, and love never fails.